Good morning. My name is Esther Manheimer. I'm Mayor of the City of Asheville, and I'd like to welcome you to the June 8th Agenda Briefing Work Session. All council members and staff are participating virtually. The live meeting will be streamed on the city's YouTube channel, accessed through the YouTube icon on the front page of the city's website, or via the live stream. However, due to technical difficulties, this meeting will not be available on Charter Spectrum Channel 193. You do have to the option of listening to the meeting via phone at 855-925-2801 using the meeting code 2048. And again, this is also available live on the city's YouTube channel. We do not take public comment during this meeting. I'll now turn it over to the city manager, Deborah Campbell.
Good morning, everyone. We have a fairly dense agenda this morning, so we're going to jump right into this. In particular, the section of the agenda on the other issues and updates, I think is going to take us a little bit of time. So this morning, we have our esteemed Assistant City Manager, Ben Woody, who is going to provide us with the overview of the agenda. Ben, with no further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell, and good morning, Mayor, council members. Ben Woody, Assistant City Manager. I'm going to dive right into the agenda, and we'll start with the first item on your Tuesday City Council meeting schedule is your retreat follow-up. That is scheduled for 2 p.m. in the council chamber. Under the other issues and updates section later this morning, the facilitator, Ed Manning, and Ms. Campbell are going to cover this item in more detail. So moving to our regular agenda beginning at 5 p.m. There are no proclamations scheduled for this meeting. I'm going to review the consent agenda, summarize several items. Please just let me know if you have questions, would like me to stop, or if you need me to cover an item that I may pass over. So we will start with item B. This is the city's annual recertification for the FEMA Community Rating System program. We do this every year typically. This program provides Asheville residents and business owners with a 10% reduction in their flood insurance premiums. And this occurs by the city participating in this program through certain outreach and mitigation activities. Moving to item D. This is kind of an interesting and unusual item for council this month. And a little bit of background on this. This is out near the airport. In 2012, the state of North Carolina removed airport-owned properties from the city's zoning jurisdiction. This particular property has been sold to a new owner that was owned by the airport, and it's been combined with an adjoining property. As allowed by North Carolina general statutes, this is an interlocal agreement with the county that will allow the city to have zoning jurisdiction over the entire parcel. I'll note it is in the city limits, so this is really about the zoning jurisdiction. It'll be zoned industrial, which was the original zoning of the property. The property owner has also provided a written consent to this action by signing the interlocal agreement. Moving on to item G. Item G, and I want to spend a second on this. Item G is a 3-year contract. It totals over $187,000 for that 3-year period. This is for the renewal of our Esri GIS software, which is a very powerful software package that provides not only spatial analysis tools for city staff, but also supports many of our highly used public platforms, such as the Open Data Portal, Map Asheville, the Climate Justice Index Map, and our Police Transparency Dashboard. So a very critical software package that the city takes advantage of and uses. Another software update or contract amendment is item H. That is our CityWorks software, which many of you have probably heard of. CityWorks is moving to a fully hosted cloud-based software as a service. It's a platform that departments like Water Resources and Public Works uses to manage their assets, work ordering system, and reporting. Also, as we continue to dive deeper in this software, we do expect to add Parks and Rec and Transportation departments to our CityWorks platform in the upcoming fiscal year. So again, 2 very important software systems the city utilizes. Item I is an agreement in which the town of Black Mountain will provide the city $25,000 to support Transit Route 170. That's the route that goes between Asheville and Black Mountain. Item J authorizes an FTA or Federal Transit Administration pass-through grant funding. So this is grant funding that goes from the city to our regional transit agencies. And what this resolution is doing is renewing and extending some of those existing sub-recipient agreements that are already in place. Item K is a contract totaling over $124,000 annually. And kind of related to the last item, this is going to provide some grants, management support, and training through a consultant to support some of our transit staff. And of course, we have a lot of new transit staff in that division as well. And then the final consent agenda item is a resolution reaffirming support of Asheville's LGBTQIA plus community. So that concludes my review of the consent agenda. I don't see any questions. So I'm going to keep moving. We're actually almost through the regular agenda. We have a manager report. We will have a very important employee recognition at our city council meeting. We're all very excited about that. So that's something to look forward to. It's one of our employees from the clerk's office. So that'll be really great. And we appreciate all the work the clerk's office does for us. Moving on to public hearings, we have.
I'm sorry, Ben. I also want to go on record and apologize to Sarah for not doing this sooner, but we had so many things on some earlier agendas that we didn't get an opportunity to recognize her earlier. So Sarah, sorry, and we will be doing it this Tuesday. So thanks for all you do.
I was going to let it be a surprise, but yeah, it's Sarah Gross is that very important employee that we're going to recognize. So thank you for all you do, Sarah.
I just didn't want Maggie to think she's going to be recognized. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm putting her on the spot.
Yeah, we all appreciate all the work that the clerk's office does. So moving on, item A is going to be continued to July 25th. And item B is another public hearing item. This is an amendment to our Unified Development Ordinance. And this is really kind of aimed towards our neighborhood meeting requirements. So as development applications come in, one of the requirements Asheville has is the first thing that a developer would need to do is schedule a meeting with the neighborhood, hopefully in a way that is productive and kind of influences that development project and has a better outcome for the community. Right now, that process is very vague. It says it has to be done, but it doesn't include a lot of detail on what the expectations are for a neighborhood meeting. And so in this particular amendment, city staff has worked with the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods, the Legacy Neighborhoods Coalition, and our Development Customer Advisory Group to really kind of dial in and create more specific requirements to how these neighborhood meetings are conducted and what the expectations are. So just to highlight a couple of items is again, we're going to take those kind of non-specific variable requirements and put some specificity behind those. And so what that'll look like is we'll have the city has created standard templates that can be used for notification letters and signage. So the manner in which the neighbors receive notice will be a little more standardized. We're also going to provide notice not only to the property owners that are in close proximity, but also to our established neighborhood associations as well to try to get a deeper notice around these meetings. We've produced a city best practice guide for how to schedule and hold these neighborhood meetings. We're increasing the notification radius from 200 feet to 400 feet outside of the CBD. We're requiring that these notices be provided to neighbors 14 days prior to the meeting. Currently it's 10, so that's a 4-day increase in the notice time. We're going to ask these meetings be registered with the city so we can display these neighborhood meetings and we can make sure that that's available to the community before they happen. We're going to have the reporting of the meetings occur on a standardized online form that the city's created. So the content from these meetings will be more standardized in the way that council receives that. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have more direct notification to our neighborhood associations. So again, really proud of the work that staff did on that with the community to move this item forward. So Planning and Zoning Commission heard this and they did recommend in favor of it.
I have one question, Ben. This is Kim. It seems like a lot of the concerns I'm hearing are addressed. Are there any that were outstanding that were maybe still in the gray area or draft mode that are not crossing the finish line?
No, I think we've gotten good support and collaboration with the community on this. The only nuance in this is, we have some procedures, like the Board of Adjustment has very technical quasi-judicial hearings. So some of the notice requirements related to the quasi-judicial hearings aren't changing. So for example, for Board of Adjustment, we typically notice only the adjoining property owners because they're the ones that truly have standing. In the Board of Adjustment proceeding, you really need to have standing on that. So there's a little bit of variation on some of the application types, but that's more driven by legal requirements that exist. But just generally in terms of how we produce the information and share it, that'll be consistent across the application types.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Moving on, under unfinished business, we are at that time of year when we have our ordinance adopting the FY24 budget. You had your public hearing at the last meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Campbell to give a couple of updates on this item and what to expect.
Okay, thank you, Ben. As he just noted, we had the public hearing, but prior to the public hearing, the city managers and staff presented a budget to you all and to the community. And I said that at that time, when we presented the manager's budget, that we had reached a pivotal milestone. But the real pivotal milestone is the adoption of the budget, which we hope will occur on next Tuesday. And what I wanted to do this morning, and I have Tony McDowell who's here, if you all have any more detailed questions, I want to just remind you of what's in the budget, and I'm going to do this pretty much in terms of key takeaways. And then I want to also discuss with you a possible staff recommended addition to the budget. So Katie, if you want to bring up the presentation. Next slide, please. So in terms of the budget, the proposed budget totals approximately $240 million. We are not recommending any type of property tax increase. You all know that we have had a lot of discussion around employee compensation, but we landed on, and the city manager's office recommended budget calls for a 5% increase for existing employees, but a little higher increase at 6% for sworn police officers. It continues to fund some of the core community services in a time of rising costs and provides additional investments in key core service areas in alignment with the council priorities. And I guess lastly, and most importantly, we are utilizing an unprecedented amount of our fund balance in order to advance the priorities and balance this budget and pay for very, very necessary enhancements in terms of services. And we think it's appropriate. We try to, as much as possible, to have a lot of the fund balance utilization directed towards one-time items, but there are some that are recurring, and that will, obviously impact future budgets. Next slide, please. And so there is going to be a recommendation that I'm asking you all to consider, and if we do not have any objections, we will include it as part of the budget recommendation for final adoption on Tuesday. There was a request from the Asheville Fire Department, among many, many other requests that we received from our other departments, to fund a kind of a training, a professional development incentive pay called the North Carolina Advanced Firefighter Certification. You may recall that as part of the police budget, our recommendations for compensation and improvements, we recommended a similar type of incentive pay. We feel like that, and I understand why firefighters made this recommendation to hopefully improve and encourage firefighters to continue to advance their knowledge, to continue to develop themselves professionally. But more importantly, I think for us, it is to create an atmosphere of building a career with the city of Asheville and not just having a job. And we think as you continue through your years of service with the city of Asheville, these types of incentives encourage retention as well as help with recruitment as well, that you generally have an opportunity for a career with this agency. So by having this recommended adjustment, we hope that in terms of public safety types of jobs, that we have created a pretty solid foundation for advancement. Our challenge, though, are the other areas of employment in the city of Asheville, like trades and labor. And so what I hope that we will do is have a much more robust conversation in our next budget cycle about how do we develop a career ladder initiative outside of non-public safety positions. Again, we think that we need to offer this opportunity for advancement and training so that we will have a skilled labor force. And again, that people will consider coming into employment in the city of Asheville offers a career and not just a job. And we think that some of this incentive pay will help us do that. In particular, again, in trades and labor, looking at how do we fund a career ladder initiative. So you can see that the estimated cost will be an approximately additional $250,000. We think, obviously, unless we cut something, which I wouldn't recommend, the additional funding would need to come from the fund balance, but that still keeps us above our 15% kind of threshold that is a part of your policy. And so if there are no concerns or issues, I will be more than happy to take questions. I think, Antoinette, you have a question?
I absolutely love this. This isn't a question. I absolutely love this because, frankly, I was thinking about at our meeting Tuesday, were this not in there, I was going to make a request that we consider something like this and perhaps do a budget amendment to include something like this later in the year. So I'm particularly excited about this. So thank you for doing this now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Maggie?
Ditto to Antoinette. I love this. I'm excited. I think this is, we all know it's a struggle to balance a budget, and this seems like a really strategic investment. And I'm excited, especially about the moving towards career ladder as we go forward. So thanks for being proactive on this.
This is Kim. I am curious, can you tell me a little bit more about how this request was added at this hour, and about how many people we expect this could impact?
I'm going to have to defer to Tony on the latter part of how many potential people. He would know that because that's how we came up with the total. How it was added was, again, looking at all of the requests, having conversations with staff in AFD, as well as even some conversations with council members, that there was concern that this had not been added. And my concern was that because it wasn't added in earlier versions, like even the urban forest wasn't in master plan, and we added it. Budgets are evolutionary, and so that's why we decided to add this at this point in time. And Tony, if you could respond to the numbers that would be impacted.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So as a part of the fire department request for this incentive, they estimated that in the first year, there would be approximately 75 firefighters that would be eligible to receive this 5% incentive pay.
Okay, thank you.
And we hope actually that there will be more added to the list, that they will pursue this certification. It seems like we don't have a whole lot, Mayor. I don't know if there's anything you want to add or any objections that you may have.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble unmuting. No, I do want to thank you all for bringing that proposal forward. I think, we've been hearing some communications from the firefighters about their concerns, and I think while this doesn't fully address everything that they raised, I think this goes a long way to show them the support that we have for them, and try to bring us all along. And I'm very glad that you mentioned sort of the bigger picture too, in terms of our other valued employees, whether they're in public works or parks and rec or the water department, other departments. We need to also figure out a way to move them up the ladder, as you mentioned. So I know that's going to take some more time, and we're looking forward to that.
Okay, so Tony?
Yeah, sorry, just quickly, if there's nothing else, I did want to do a quick reminder. Maybe this is more me prompting Brad to just give a reminder about the State Bill 473 and how that's going to impact the vote on Tuesday. So Brad, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tony. You are quick on the punch and you beat me to it today, but excellent prodding. Good morning still, council members. So I do want to give you a reminder, you did receive an email from staff recently, but in advance of your budget vote, it is very important that you all remember the new law that was put in place now a little over a year ago that places a new burden on us to look out for any conflicts where you are appropriating or granting money to any nonprofits with which you are associated. So here are the big tent poles of this law. If you serve either as a director, officer, or board member on a nonprofit, and we are as a city appropriating any funds, funding them in any way through a grant or otherwise, we need to make sure that we have recused you from that particular vote. Now, we're bringing this up in the context of the budget vote because that's something we really want you to give some consideration to. But please remember that this applies all the time. Going forward, as we proceed in any votes with nonprofits receiving funding, if you're associated with them, this same rule will apply. So there are very strong penalties in place under the new law for this. So if you have not yet provided myself and Tony with a list of any nonprofits that are being funded in this budget that you're associated with, please do let us know as soon as possible. And remember that this is an ongoing obligation going forward. If you've got any questions about this or need additional information, reach out to me and we can speak after the meeting.
Oh, Tony, do you have anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you all very much.
All right, so we will go back, make those adjustments, and look forward to adoption of the budget on Tuesday. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to pick up and continue on our meeting agenda. Under new business, we have a slate of appointments to our advisory boards and commissions. I'll talk a little more about that in our council committee overview section of the agenda. And then finally, just want to note there will be a closed session on Tuesday at the end of our regular meeting.
But Ben, I actually believe that has changed and we're going to delay that closed session now.
Okay, so that will not be the case. So that concludes our review of the agenda. If there are no other questions on your Tuesday agenda, I'm going to move directly into the council committees review. And we have a number of committees to go over today. And so I'm actually up first. So at our Planning and Economic Development Council Committee meeting, we have 3 items on the agenda for this month. And that meeting is next week on Monday. We have the Downtown Commission annual update that will be provided from Brian Moffitt, who is the chair of the Downtown Commission. So he's going to go through some of their accomplishments and some of the things they're planning to work on in the coming year. Our next item on the PED agenda is we'll have John Philman there, who's going to give a overview and some proposed changes to our strategic events partnership program. So we've had to kind of reimagine that a little bit and pivot in some ways, kind of in the post-COVID variation of that. So we'll have a good update from John on that program and some anticipated changes. And then finally, the third item on PED is going to be an update from Lucy Crown on the Asheville Unpaved Alliance pilot program. So Asheville Unpaved is working with the city to identify 3 city-owned parcels that will be pilots for natural surface trails that will connect to our greenway and multimodal network of trails. So those are the 3 items on the PED agenda. Policy, Finance, and Human Resources Committee. Deborah, we have that canceled, but I think that's been rescheduled. Is that correct?
That is correct. To the next council date, I think it's the 27th.
Okay. Moving on to boards and commissions committee meeting update. We have that meeting scheduled for June 13th at 1 o'clock. Do want to note one thing for the boards and commission, not only for the committee members, but for the council. Remember, on June 13th, we also have our 2 p.m. Retreat work session. So that boards and commission meeting will have to end, it'll conclude within 1 hour. So that's just something to note for council members. And of course, if you'd like for us to have space for you on site, we can do that as part of that meeting. So please just let Sarah know your preference for how you want to join that meeting. In terms of the agenda for the boards and commission council committee, we've really got 3 items on that. Number 1 is our summer board appointments. This will be our first appointment session under our new quarterly appointment schedule. And of course, those recommendations from boards and commission will be on the council agenda item or agenda later that night. The second item is we're going to ask the committee to provide some direction on upcoming Planning and Zoning Commission and Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority appointment process. We have 3 vacancies on the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have 1 existing member that is interested and eligible for reappointment. We have 2 vacant seats, and we have a total of 4 applicants for that board. Again, need 3 appointments. And then for the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority, we have 4 eligible applicants. We have 1 upcoming vacancy for appointment. One of the things the committee is going to talk about at that meeting is whether or not to conduct in-person interviews for those seats. If we do move forward with those interviews, that would be scheduled for the August 22nd council meeting. And the last item for boards and commissions is they're going to discuss and get an update from the clerk's office on some of the outreach efforts that are ongoing for advertising for our vacant seats. If you remember, we moved to a quarterly appointment sequencing to allow more time for deeper outreach and hopefully to get a better pool of candidates. If there are no questions on boards and commission committee, I am going to move to the Sandra's got a question. Go ahead, Councilwoman Kilgore.
Yes, just want to ask a question while everyone's here. I know basically what happens is a lot of times, like I said, doing outreach to get people interested in boards. So I'm just wondering if a board member, boards and commissions member has done outreach to reach out to people that may be interested in applying to these boards. And those are the ones that, some of those may be the ones that have put in applications. Do that board member have to recuse himself from voting for that particular person?
I think the answer is no. And Maggie, do you want to add anything to that, or?
I would say no. We can confirm with Brad though, but just because you reach out to someone doesn't necessarily mean that they would get appointed. But if they did, that's good for them. Oh, Brad?
Yeah, I would echo that. I don't think that creates any conflict that would require recusal, Councilmember Kilgore.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So next we have Housing and Community Development Committee, and I'm going to turn that over to Assistant City Manager. Actually, the next two I'm going to turn over to Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood. So she'll cover HCD as well as equity engagement.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben, and good morning, Mayor and City Council. Both the Housing and Community Development Committee as well as Equity and Engagement Committee have their next meeting scheduled for June 20th. HCD only has one substantive item on their June 20th agenda, and that is consideration of a land use incentive grant for the Aston Flats micro apartment project, which is located at 46 Aston. This project is committing 47 units, 20% of the total 231 units, to be affordable for a period of 20 years at 80% or below AMI. The total grant is estimated to be $1.9 million over a 21 year period of the land use incentive grant. Moving on to the June 20th Equity and Engagement Committee meeting. First on the agenda is an update from Brenda Mills on the June 12th Reparations Commission meeting. She'll just be going through the substantive items on their agenda and providing status updates on the work of that commission. Then we'll hear a recommendation from the HRCA to adopt the Asheville Crown Act for protection from discrimination against natural, protective and culturally significant hairstyles. And last on the agenda, we have an update from Dawa Hitch on the research herself, as well as the rest of the CAPE team have been doing on conducting hybrid meetings and the technology required for those hybrid meetings, as well as the use of hybrid technology in board commission meetings, council committee meetings, as well as city council meetings. So we'll be getting an exciting update from Dawa on that on June 20th. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ben for the 8-week agenda overview.
Thank you, Rachel. And I'm going to be really brief on the 8. Oh, excuse me, Councilwoman.
Sorry.
Esther, go ahead.
Thanks. I just had a question on the PD committee meeting agenda. There is an item for John Philman, the 2024 Special Events Program. I just wanted to know if this is like one of these situations where we're rejiggering how we're dealing with, I forget what we call legacy participants. Anyway, because sometimes what happens, if that's what it is, we start getting communications before and we don't know what's being proposed or what staff's been talking about. So if this is something that's going to affect folks like in that, if that makes any sense, I'd love a heads up about that.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a different approach towards how those, I think what we've called in the past anchor events can be supported with city funding and resources. John Philman and Chris Corl's office have worked very closely actually with the legal office to try to come up with an approach that sustains those events, but also does it in a way that I think is legally appropriate. And so I don't know in terms of the heads up if we want to get into that more now or if we want to do more of a follow up on that with more information. I'll kind of ask.
I think Previously, council has given direction that we're aware of the legal issues, and we didn't want to make a change. I mean, I thought that was the earlier indication, so I guess I'm a little bit concerned that if we're going to do something, maybe it needs to go to council for discussion. Anyway, I mean, because what happens is we get a lot of these participants who reach out directly to council, and it gets really confusing really quickly, and we're just not aware of what staff's been doing, and we get a lot of questions where we don't have any idea because we haven't been in the loop yet.
Mayor, this is Brad. I believe we've going to be presenting to you a solution which is going to be very favored by those particular groups. All of those organizations and the events that they've put on, I think, have excellent protection under this proposal. So I do not anticipate you're going to see a lot of preliminary questions or pushback about that. I do believe this is a very good path forward for all those organizations who may have concerns.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, and I would just add, Mayor, this is Deborah, that, this meeting is on June the 12th, and I don't think that we have heard from any of the groups because we have done a lot of outreach and had conversations with those groups on any proposed changes. I think we're headed in a good direction.
Good to hear. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I think Kim, you're next.
Yeah, this is just a logistics question on timing. Now that we're not having monthly boards and commissions committee meetings, I anticipated that the list of appointments would be longer, and it is, and there's some, statutory appointments that need to be made. I wonder if it makes sense for us to move it up, and we can certainly look at like 12:30 or 12 or something like that. And that can probably be done over email. But if someone wanted to circle that around with the boards and commissions committee, it just seems like a really narrow window, and we don't yet know if there will even be any public comment. But if there were, we're running a really tight corner to getting to 2 o'clock, even if we're already in the building.
Kim, you're saying the start time of the meeting to 12.
Yeah, it seems like, I hope we get this done in 50 minutes is a little, I wonder if we're putting ourselves in a pinch point we might not necessarily need to be in.
I can circulate and see if that could work for the committee members.
I'll go ahead and give you a heads up and say 12:30 is really pushing it for me. I have a meeting before and I'm gonna have to come and be there. So that's gonna be difficult for me.
Okay.
Sandra, you were on mute.
No, I was going to say that would work for me, but if we have someone that's, is going to conflict with schedule, I think we can still make the one and make sure we sort of, move it forward.
For scheduling purposes, I could do something early in the morning, our old, like 9 o'clock time.
Yes, with the policy and finance meeting canceled, we could look at a 9 or a 10.
Okay. Yeah, and this conversation can definitely be had over email, but I would suggest we look at it.
Perfect. I'll send an email. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last, Mayor, one last thought on the strategic event partnerships. The item will have to come to council. So PED will have a conversation, but it still comes to full council. And I would also note that later today, actually, the PED agenda package will come out, and John Philman and Chris Corral have provided not only a detailed presentation, but they've provided a detailed staff report. So a lot of the details you'll be able to find in that information that comes out later today. And of course, if there are any questions, please just let us know.
And I would also add that it is coming to Policy, Finance, and HR Committee, Mayor, before going to full council. So we've got two committees' eyes on these changes. Okay.
Thank you. So real quickly, I know we got to get to other issues. 8-week agenda items. I've got 3 things I want to put on your radar. First is on June 27th, you'll have the public hearing for the conditional zoning of 319 Biltmore. As you remember, Planning and Zoning Commission continued that at their May meeting. They did rehear that and have made a 4-1 vote to recommend approval. So that a very important city project is moving forward to council, and you'll have that on your June 27th agenda. Another thing that we've really been working to try to get to a place we can bring to council is the Pack Square Place visioning plan. We are trying to get that in reviewed and ready and close the loop on public engagement. Had a meeting with the county earlier this week, and we feel good saying that we should be able to have the Pack Square Place visioning plan to council at your August meeting. Right now, that's our goal. Could be September, but we anticipate August. And then finally, last thing, a little bit of good news is please just remember that in July and August, council only has one meeting each of those months. And because of the summertime, we've got a little extra time to not be together. So again, just a reminder, you only have your second meetings in July and August. I know everybody's happy about that. And so if there are no questions on the 8-week agenda, I am going to move towards other issues and updates. And we have, of course, Ms. Campbell here will be a part of that, but you can also see Ed Manning has joined us, and he'll be our facilitator and be here for this discussion. So Ms. Campbell, I'll turn it over to you under other issues and updates.
Thanks, Ben. And I want to go on record of saying I'm not all that happy in not being the council and having 2 meetings for July and August, Ben, right? We're going to miss them, right? Okay. Yeah, we appreciate that. All righty. So this item is to discuss your work session regarding your strategic priorities. This is follow-up from your retreat that you had in early March. I think you all did some really, really good work, heavy lifting on a lot of issues, including finalizing your 6 priorities, as well as crafting 70 statements that originally were being discussed as what are our goals for next year. And we got lots of variations of types of statements. And what we heard back from council is we don't think that we concluded that work, because we had, as staff, we brought back some information to you. We said, hey, here are the duplicates that have been taken out. Here's kind of how we have revised some of the statements. And you all said, thanks, staff. We appreciate your work. We may be able to utilize it, but we really, really want to roll up our sleeves and do a little work at looking at, re-looking at these statements. And so what we have done is invited a facilitator, because we know this is going to take a lot of work. And at the time that we created the 70 statements, staff participated in those discussions. We would highly recommend and suggest that staff not be a part of that, but be there as a resource, but not necessarily for participation, direct participation. And so we've asked Ed Manning to come today to kind of give you an overview of what to expect on Tuesday, but also we sent out some information to you all, those 70 statements on Tuesday. And I think we asked you all to look at whether you could determine duplicates and confirm that they were duplicates, so that we could take those out and come to the meeting on Tuesday with the actual statements that we will be working from. So I'm going to turn it over to Ed just shortly, but I wanted to just give a brief bio. Ed Manning is the Managing Director for Evoking Wisdom, a leadership development organization. The primary aim of Evoking Wisdom is to support the growth and evolution of authentic leadership, leaders who know who they are, what they stand for, and why they do what they do. Ed Manning is an accomplished facilitator, experienced consultant, and skillful executive coach. He has more than 20 years of experience, and actually the first retreat as a city manager that I had, Ed Manning was our facilitator. So I think, Mayor, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear from Ed. Welcome back, Ed. But could someone just tell me, we got sent 2 spreadsheets with the 71. One is very colorful, one is not. Just real quick, maybe I missed it, but what's the difference there between the 2?
That's exactly what I'm here to talk about. So thanks for.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, Deborah, for the introduction. It's great to see many of you and some I'm meeting for the first time. I'm thrilled to be working with you again. The difference between the 2 is the 71 statements that you created at your retreat. We need to hone that down to goal statements for the 6 priority areas. And so what I've tried to do was I looked at it from an outside perspective and said, wow, that really sounds similar. The color-coded one for each of the 6 areas, if you're looking at the sheet right now, and I can share mine screen with you, I think. This worksheet here has 2 tabs. The information is identical. What I tried to do to make it easier for you is to color code it in the second sheet. Reason being is our whole purpose, as I understand it, for next week's work session is to take the work you've done and hone it so that we come up with goal statements for the priority areas to really give direction to the city and city staff on what you want them to accomplish in the coming years. To do that, we're starting by prioritizing, and we'll use dots through Mentimeter. But what I don't want to happen is to have 2 things that are almost the same thing or that are the same thing, splitting the vote. All 7 of you could unanimously agree that this is one of the priorities, but because they're in 2 different places, one gets 3 votes, one gets 4, and it doesn't even make our top list. So that's why it's really important, and we're not going to have enough time in that session to go through and eliminate the duplicates. So it's homework, and I apologize that we've got homework for you. But what I tried to do is make that homework easy, and you'll see on the second sheet, this colored one here, within each of the priority areas, we've tried to color code this, and I did get help. The staff was very helpful in putting this together. These 2 look very similar, and here's a suggestion that combines the 2. Sometimes it's just the same one, like this one really is the same. It's just in there twice, and I don't want, again, the vote to be splitted. So if we could go in and decide which of these are duplicates.
So the column.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So the column B is an unedited one of the 71 goals.
That is
right. And then column C is your attempt to condense
right.
It.
Just to make your lives a little easier and save you a little time. But feel free to take out the suggestion and put in whatever you think. But what I really want to do is, can we eliminate one of these so we don't split your vote when we get into the session next week? That's the big thing. And if you feel like, no, these 2 are not the same thing, they've got to stay in here, that's fine too. I just want to get clear on it. Any questions? Doing this beforehand is going to make it a lot easier. It's also going to help bring the priorities, the ones that really are important to the 7 of you, to the top. And then we can use those priorities to then create the goal statement to give direction to the city and the staff on what it is you need them to accomplish. Kim?
Thanks for joining us again, Ed. One of the things that I've been curious about when I've been looking at this is, in the past, we also had a filter where it was like, well, these things are already being operationalized. They're already in staff work plans, for example. And when I was trying to pull out some of the things that I imagined I might have brought to the table, and I matched it up against the other document that we had at our retreat, which I pulled, I think it had like 51 items, and it wasn't everything, right? We acknowledge that. What I was trying to do at the table in the retreat, but also doing that again through this process, is kind of filter out what we're already doing so that we really, once again, narrow more and more of our focus on, are we really asking for new things? Or are we asking for something that's currently being done to bubble up to the top? Because that would allow us to consider truly within our staff capacity if some of the things that are being done need to fall out of priority, to be honest, because we have limitations. So I wasn't sure if, I know that's sort of what staff was maybe trying to do before when they were trying to help us narrow, and that's why we're back at the table again. But I just wanted to share that that's kind of what I'm doing while I'm looking at this, is maybe making for myself another column and matching it up against what I know is being done, whether it's the Transit Master Plan, Asheville in Motion Plan, any number of documents.
And that's a great point. And it would, to your point about, well, there may be some things that are now taking precedent over what is currently being done. I think that, Deborah, you correct me if I'm wrong, you could certainly put another column in here and list what's currently being worked on. But ideally in the meeting next week, we really want council to come up with what are the priorities, even if they are being currently worked on. If it's still a priority, we definitely want to know that. Like you said, we want to continue to put effort into it, and then use that to give a much broader goal direction for the city so that they can continue moving forward over the next several years.
I get that, and I appreciate that. And then we're always still adding. And I know that at some point we will have to look at, does something need to come off the list?
Yeah.
Part of that is on what we can do on the whether or not we add stuff from this new set. But if we don't consider that other list of 51 things the staff is currently doing, sometimes I see, let's say, if there's a planning document that has been on the council agenda 10 times and it keeps getting moved, is it about to get deprioritized? Do we have the courage to shift staff priorities? And I just wanted to see if that's anywhere in our to-do list as a conversation or a bullet point of like, what comes off of our priorities?
Good. Go ahead, Deborah.
So I think this discussion is good, Kim, because we truly need to figure out whether council is directing us to do initiatives or to accomplish goals, and talk about what is it that we want to do in the community and the impact, or are you wanting to say, I want you to actually undertake an initiative, a project. And I think that's where we need further discussion. And in particular, I think Ed needs the direction. What are you solving for? And we thought it was goal statements. And then staff would come back and say, with this statement, here are some initiatives that we think relate to or support this goal.
Yeah, I think this is very much the challenge, and happens a lot, particularly in municipalities and not-for-profits, where the board or the council is setting direction, but it's the staff that actually has to implement. And when you're doing strategic planning, we need council and board, if you're in that mindset, needs to set vision, mission, core values, the high level stuff, but they also need to say, well, these are our goal areas and what we're hoping to accomplish. And so they can help some with, this is the impact we want to see. But it really becomes the staff that has to then say, all right, well, here's how we're going to measure it. Here's how we're going to go about doing it. And here's the reports we're going to give you to show you that it's done. And personally, when I look through the list of statements, there are a lot of initiatives on here that are not goal statements. They're to-dos. They're not quite to-dos. They're bigger than that.
Sure. An example would be, we could say a goal would be implement the recommendations and timeline of our climate justice initiative. And a lot of the things in the neighborhood and climate resilience category that are initiatives would fit underneath that goal. And if that was a part of my work, is to narrow that. But if to be honest, we have heard this from staff, if we're going to do that, where does the plastic reduction fit in? So like, I just wanted to name that I don't see a part of the conversation where we take stuff off, and I don't know if it needs to be a bullet list, but there's a capacity issue. Just wanted to honor it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that would be part of staff's responsibility to take the direction that you set and come back and say, okay, here's what we're going to do going forward. And that means we're also not going to be focusing on these things that you had us doing. And that's, they know their capacity better than probably anybody, and they should be the ones saying that. And their council could object and say, no, we need this because it is a priority. So move this other one down. Exactly.
Thank you.
And just to take that example further, Kim, because I'm very much on the same page of what you're saying is, one of the line items in the neighborhood and climate resilience is essentially saying, look at a bunch of our climate plans and policies and prioritize resources and efforts. So similarly, like, let's look at all of the different policies and priorities we have, from 100% renewable energy policy to the municipal climate action plan. Let's look at them and try and find where the priorities are, because in a lot of our planning documents, there's hundreds of initiatives, but if we can prioritize efforts like that, then staff can look through all of that and say, look, there's 75 things we could do within these 3 plans. Council, which of these should rise to the top of the list over the coming year, or what have you? And so I feel like the efforts that are happening, like that example, that one line item in this list, is an example to try and lift up for prioritization. I think the work that's happening in HCD to look at all of the affordable housing incentives together and then kind of figure out where tweaking needs to be helps us move out of initiatives and into policy prioritization space, which I think will help staff then not be so overwhelmed by a long growing list of initiatives.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. And if we get to a point where we don't talk about what's coming off the list, then I do worry if what happens next year when we've gone from 51 things to 70 things back to 60 things, but we really only had capacity for 40. And then we start hearing about where were the 10 to 20 things that didn't get done. And I think that if we don't have a conversation about what we can't do because we're at the limit, then we're kind of missing the part.
I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't being clear. Part of what I was saying is that if we only look at strategic prioritization once a year with a list, that's not going to be benefiting from the knowledge our staff can bring. But if at this time of year, we can say, hey, we want to start taking a chunk of policy like housing affordable incentives or environmental stuff, and then spend 6 months exploring them, that the process will ultimately whittle down the list. I don't think whittling the list, it happens in one retreat at 1 year. I think it's a policy process.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Sandra.
Well, and looking at the list, and like you said, trying to basically bring it together or whatever. And when staff looks at it, maybe they have, is it possible they can maybe attach a cost analysis, because basically everything we're talking about doing has to fall within the budget. So therefore, if we get a cost analysis to do certain things, brought to us by staff, then maybe we will actually look at what's most important from the cost perspective. Does that make sense?
It does, but it's also a little bit ahead of the game. It's okay. A little further down the road, because what we're really trying to do is back you up from the details that you've created to something broader that gives direction, but not necessarily outlining exactly how it's going to be done and how much it's going to cost and all that, because that's truly the staff work. Staff needs to go in and come back and say, hey, here are the 5 things, or here are the 7 things that we have the capacity to work on in this area this year or this next 3 years, and it's going to cost X, Y, Z. That means money's got to get moved from somewhere. And so it's both a financial cost impact, and to Kim's point, of human capacity cost impact that has to play into that. But that's much further down the road.
Okay.
They need direction from you first.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And if I could add, some of the financial implications are actually included in the budget. When we looked at, because you set your priorities in March, at those 6, we looked at initiatives that might be linked to the accomplishment of those priority areas, and then they drafted our budget to the city council in direct relationship with the priorities and the things that we think we are able to accomplish, and considering those things that we are currently working on that we need to get across the finish line. Because a lot of what we do is not accomplished in a year. It sometimes takes us much longer.
Yeah, very much so. Good. So, council, you've got homework. My apologies for that, because I know you're very, very busy, but we've got such a tight time together next week. It will speed that process and hopefully give us a chance to be very successful. Maggie.
So, it'd be great to know exactly what homework you're expecting. It sounded like earlier you were asking, do we have a comfort level with a suggested color coding that kind of merges line items? And is that, because I'll say I've read through them, I've digested them. I think y'all did a really thoughtful job without putting your finger on the scale to merge things. And I really like the suggestions in column C. Are you looking for that direction today? Or, so I'm curious to my other councilwomen, how do folks, if you've had enough time to look, like, has anyone seen concerns in that column C where there's suggesting of like merging duplicates or pulling together things? I'm very comfortable. I would give it a thumbs up at this point. I don't see any track changes or concerns from my side.
And I agree with you, Becky, too. I did look at it. I like the thing, actually, sort of consolidate. So,
Sandra, you cut out on me. Did I hear you say that you also agree that yes?
yes, I agree.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I was trying to make your lives easier because I know how busy you are. So yeah, it'll make it much easier next week as well. Can we say by close of business tomorrow, if anybody has an objection to combining or to the suggestions that we've offered and removing the test, that you would let us know that? Esther?
I will try. I am in transit. So and also we've got 2 folks not on this call, Shanika and Sage. So can someone reach out to them and make sure they know what the homework assignment is? And so assuming that we say, yeah, we're good with column C, that's a starting point for our 2-hour meeting on Tuesday. Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And Mayor, this is Deborah. Yes, we absolutely will reach out to those council members who aren't here and reiterate through a memo or email, I'm sorry, what the homework assignment is, just for clarification.
Okay, great. Thanks.
To the full council as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing that. I'm looking forward to our session next week. I think we can get a lot of good stuff done and walk away with what staff needs from you as we go forward. So thanks for letting me join and take some time today.
Thank you, Ed. We appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you on Tuesday.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed.
See you, folks.
All right, Ben, I think we're at IRC.
Yeah, right. And Deborah, you actually, no, I'm sorry. Next, we have IRC, an update on the Independent Review Committee's completion of work. We have Brad Branham, I think is going to lead us in that discussion. And I believe that Jay Dundas is here as well. So Brad, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ben. I think I can take it from there. Again, hello, council. As you probably are aware, we are reaching into the final stages now of the work of the independent review committee, which you formed to analyze the water outage event. They have now reached the point where they have completed their analysis. They have prepared a report and they have submitted it to the city. That report was forwarded directly to me. As you are aware, they were, in order to provide a comprehensive report, they were provided with detailed information about the city's water system, including elements that are considered critical, sensitive infrastructure and confidentially protected under state law. It was imperative that they had this information to provide a thorough and complete analysis. However, before we can release that report publicly, we do now need to go through the process of reviewing it in order to redact those elements that are protected under state law in order to safeguard our system as a whole. I have now met twice with the IRC and discussed the needed redactions. I will be in the process over the next day or so completing that. So it appears that at this point, we are ready now to proceed with that group giving its final presentation to the council. They have asked me to convey to you that as per their original schedule, they would like to do this presentation for you at your upcoming meeting next week on the 13th. They have prepared a presentation which will be ready by the end of the day to be produced publicly as well as to council for your review. This includes the slide presentation that they would give. As for their final written report, this will be ready as soon as I can possibly get it ready. My plan is that it will be prepared in a necessarily redacted version for council as well as for the public in advance of your meeting. However, that may not occur until perhaps Friday or Monday. Those are my best estimates at this point about how long that final redaction work will take. So there will be a short time frame between the time that this report is made available to council and the presentation. But I wanted to make that, I'm going to bring that to your awareness as well as the request by the IRC to continue to stay on schedule with the presentation on the 13th. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if Jade is here, he can certainly amend that as well. But I believe it now falls to council to determine where you would like to place this on your agenda, either for this meeting or a future meeting.
This is Esther. You kind of, I lost you for a second there, so hopefully you all can hear me. Is the present, I didn't hear you about the time presentation and the report in advance of the meeting.
So I think I got all that, Mayor. The presentation has been submitted. It has been reviewed by me as well. They being the group are making a couple of final revisions to that and should be able to submit their final presentation for publishing to us today. So that should be prepared to go out on essentially the normal schedule for council materials. The report I will be working to finalize over the next day or so. It will probably not be ready today, but it may be ready tomorrow. Monday, I think, is guaranteed. Unless something wild happens to throw that schedule off. So you will have, I believe, not just the presentation today, but the final report produced in advance of the meeting if you choose to have it on Tuesday of next week. But it may not come, the report may not come until Monday.
And there's nothing saying that if we were to talk about it on Tuesday, we could also talk about it in future meetings. So it's not, okay. So the question is, how long do we need to absorb, and we want the community to absorb the information before we have a public meeting on it?
I believe that is correct, Councilmember Alden, on both counts. As I said, there's a strong inclination from the group to move forward. They've tried to arrange their schedule so that they can be there, but there's nothing stopping the council from having this as a topic of discussion on future calendars as well.
So you said they want to do it.
I'm fine.
The committee. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Esther. Sorry.
I was just going to say, and I'm sorry, I'm in a bad zone, but I'm fine with going ahead Tuesday then.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I feel like the sooner we as a community can start absorbing what we need to learn so we can start moving forward, the better. But if anyone sees a concern, I would love to understand what you're thinking because I'm flexible.
And Kim, I think your hand is up.
Yeah, I just got to ask, do we have a estimate of how many pages this is?
It is, well, let me put it this way. There is going to be a publicly produced report that is probably somewhere in the range of approximately 60 to 65 pages. The unredacted version, which will be produced to council, also includes not just the work of the group, but the work of the independent engineer that also produced a lot of slides. That was part of their presentation that they gave to the group. That adds quite a bit to this, but it doesn't add a lot to the substantive narrative. It's just slides. So there's quite an additional part that council will see, but the primary substance of the report is approximately 65 pages.
So I think about open meetings policy recommendations that are made that make documents not just available, but accessible. And this is such an important issue that I wonder if it's going to come out Monday, if a 24-hour turnaround, the feedback we should get is that the document isn't really accessible in an amount of time, not for me to make an informed decision and be able to read through it effectively, not for members of the public to be able to look at it as far as being able to, if they need to translate it or have a vision reader. When we're talking about making important public decisions and the public documents that inform those decisions, I just really don't think 24 hours is enough time. So while I do hear that we should go ahead and start having conversations about this, I'm trying to balance that with like, why not wait until, like, go ahead and release it when we have it and then have the scheduled conversation at our next meeting.
Will we be asked to be?
I think what I'm hearing is that the task force, I think what I'm hearing is the task force is really eager to finish and they're scheduled to come Tuesday. Some are traveling, right? I think that's the only, that's sort of what we're balancing here is their kind of strong request, I think I'm hearing to, I don't, Brad, you tell us. I mean, you've talked to them directly.
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor. This had always actually been the plan to produce the presentation and the report essentially for this meeting on the 13th. There was one delay of a week to allow them some extra time to complete. So we did have a little bit of a amended and shortened schedule to do this review process. But staff has done everything in its power to try to get through this as quickly as possible so that we could preserve the option for council to be able to hear it on the same originally scheduled date. We do recognize that will be a short turnaround between the production of the report and the presentation. I would note again that there may be a chance that I can get this out even earlier. I am going to be burning this as much as I can to get through the final redaction process. But I throw Monday out because I do believe that's the latest possible that it will come out, and hopefully it can be produced beforehand, whether it's at this or a future meeting for the final presentation.
Would we be able to work with the team and have them join us on Tuesday, but just know that there won't be any decisions made? Because I definitely, Kim, what you're saying, I agree, to be able to absorb, process, connect to community, and then decide. That's a turnaround that is so tight that I don't love, but my sense is we're going to probably need a lot of conversation to figure out I don't know what's in the report, so I don't know if there's any decisions we'd be making if we were to just understand that there's no decision making this Tuesday. It's a listening and absorbing, and then any decision making is later. Does that help with some of the concern that you're saying, Kim?
Well, I think that we have to hear the report when we can hear it from the committee. So I think that because the timeline is there and travel plans are made, I can honor that. I do agree that decision making would need to come later.
If I may follow up on that, Councilmember Ronnie and Councilmember Ullman, if added to this agenda as originally planned, it would be a presentation item only. So we would not be planning immediately to have public comment at that point. If this is something the council would like to do or include additional council discussion, you could always add that at a future meeting. but we would not include any decisions to be made by council on the agenda unless council wished to take that on as an additional step. And that is everything I had. I believe I'm hearing a consensus for us to include this on Tuesday's agenda as part of the presentation portion. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And maybe I think that Jade is on the line. Jade, you have been the facilitator for this group. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I have left out?
No, Brad, appreciate that. You've covered it. And again, that was the travel arrangements were a pretty big factor in their desire to do continue to present on the 13th. So you covered that as well.
All right, thank you, Jade. If there are no other questions or comments on this, I believe I will turn it back over to Ben to proceed with the rest of your agenda today. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Brad. We are now at the last item under other issues and updates, and we're going to have David Belton, our director of the Water Resources Department, is going to provide an update on the advanced metering infrastructure initiative. And so, David, I see we've got the slide deck shared, and I don't see you yet, David, but I feel certain you're going to jump on in a minute. And I believe David may have some other folks with him he'll need to introduce. So I'll turn it over to David.
Thanks, Ben. Good afternoon, everybody. David Melton, Director of Water Resources. I also have with me Joe Kelly from Jacobs. Jacobs has a wing in their portfolio that does nothing but AMI, and Joe is a part of our project management team. And we'll be co-presenting today, so I'm going to do the first few slides, then turn it over to Joe. But stop us if you have any questions or comments. Next slide, please. A little bit of background in the presentation outline. On July 26, 2020, this council approved a series of contracts totaling just under $29 million to move forward with Advanced Metering Infrastructure, or AMI project. We're going to cover some of the benefits of the AMI, project timeline and progress that's been made, and some of the customer outreach and education efforts that are planned and already underway. Next slide, please. AMI and the benefits. Advanced Metering Infrastructure, or AMI, is a fully integrated system of water meters and other equipment and information systems that enable communication between the meter and the utility. And by that, I mean the meters will report to what we call collectors, then the collectors report back to the head end or the server, which will be actually in the cloud. So, which some of the benefits of that include improved accuracy of the meters, and that improved accuracy, these meters that we're installing go down and detect low flows that the present metering system does not detect. So the accuracy will be a lot greater there. Available and accessible water consumption data via the customer portal. It will look much like what we see in our deep bills as far as usages and things like that. It will afford the customers the ability to actually manage their own water. They'll be 100% in control of what they use, when they use it, and those type activities, which will be that part of the program or the project is very customer centric. We also get the benefit of a reduction in truck rolls, which aligns with our sustainability and lower carbon footprint goals that we have as a city. And we accomplish that by not rolling trucks to read meters as we presently do with the ride-by system. Also, that ties back to the accuracy of the meters is reduction in non-revenue water due to more accurate meters. We'll be detecting those lower flows that don't register on our meters, our present metering system now. And also what makes everybody happy, including me, is it affords us with a much smoother transition from bi-monthly billing to monthly billing. But this will be after the end of the project when all the meters are installed. Next slide, please. This is a timeline of kind of where we are. As you can see, before we get to the big green circle. There's been a lot of front end work done, a ton of work presently. We actually have, I believe it's 20 meters.
About 25.
About 25 meters installed now, which we call our friendly installs. And we get those meters installed to make sure all the software is working properly, everything's reporting properly. We can produce bills as we should. So that's the idea behind those 25 friendlies, and that's gone very well so far. Mid-June, and we're still looking at next week, June 12th, with a slow start. What that will entail is roughly installing 200 meters a month, a week, while still monitoring the system and making sure everything's up and going. And I'm super excited about this part because every new meter that goes in the ground takes out one of the ones where we have failed transmitters. Then mid-July, we plan to move to full implementation of the whole system, and they're hoping for between 700 and 800 meters being replaced a week when that starts. Next slide, please. Some of the customer outreach that's happening and has happened, of course, for the 25 friendly sites, we contacted those customers directly. They're kind of the champions of the system at this point, so they're kicking the tires and trying it out for us. So we've had really good response from that group of folks, and we actually have 7 of those meters on our metering test bench at our Bingham Road maintenance facility, where we can check events such as low flow, no flow, simulating a leak, private side leak scenario. So all that's done very well. But moving forward, customers will be notified 5 weeks before their installation by letter in the mail. Then again, 2 weeks before installation by postcard. Then hopefully post installation, or if there's an issue with the installation, our installer will leave a door hanger. And some of the problems could be, a car's parked over the meter or something that they just can't get to the meter at that point. So that's what we're doing to outreach to the customers and let them know from there. Next slide, please. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Joe. He's going to go over some of the frequently asked questions that we have, and we'll have, of course, have all this on the website, which is already up and going for this project. Joe?
Thanks, David. And thank you, everyone. Appreciate you having me on today. Some of the frequently asked questions that we see with every community when we go into to undertake a project of this type, it's something that is usually a once every 20-year type of project. So we do get a lot of questions. Some of them being, why is the city doing this? What's the reasoning behind it? And in Asheville's case, one of the big questions is, why are you replacing our water meters? Well, your current system is nearing its end of life. And the current system is an AMR system, or an automatic meter reading system, not necessarily an AMI system. So we're going to be installing the new meters that are AMI, which will replace your ones that are coming to the end of their life expectancy. These new meters and transmitters, they have a 20-year life expectancy. They're both battery operated, and they will, as David pointed out earlier, with the type of meter that the city has chosen, they will be able to measure low flow a lot more accurately than the current meters that are in place. And as far as, everyone's getting the same meter. So as far as the usage, every customer will be billed for their usage and only their usage. Nothing more, nothing less. If once they get the portal and they're able to monitor their usage, they, as David said, they have complete control over that. So if they want to start cutting back on their bill, they can look at where they need to cut it back. So it empowers your customers to determine what their bill amount is going to be at the end of the month. Next slide, please. Well, I have to be at home during the meter installation. no, the residents do not have to be at home. They're more than welcome to be there if they want to, but the meters are outside, mostly in front yards. So the installer will contact the resident to let them know they're there, explain what they're doing, turn their water off, change their meter, and then leave the door hanger once the installation is either completed or if other action needs to be taken. It's going to take about 15 to 30 minutes to complete the entire installation. What we try to do is get the installer to go ahead and put the meter in first so they can get their water on as quickly as possible. So just because we say it's 15 to 30 minutes, their water may only be interrupted for a shorter period of time. We try to do that as much as possible, but in some cases there may be issues where that's not possible. But
and I just want to interject for just a second. While the installers are on site, this project dovetails with another project initiative we have going, which is our lead and copper removal project. The installers will also be helping us with our inventory that we have to get done. They'll be identifying the service line material on the city side as well as the customer side while they're on site.
Correct. Yep. And like I said, the actual meter install is pretty quick. There's some other ancillary work that needs to happen to program the transmitter so that the transmitter is with the appropriate account number and the appropriate meter. But the whole process should be about 30 minutes. Next slide, please. Your installation contractor is a company called Pedal Valves, and they are a company out of Louisiana that was chosen along with Aclara to install the infrastructure. They are experienced doing this type of work. This is what they do. All their installers are employees of the company, and we don't anticipate having to hire anyone out of the local area to do that work. But if we have to, that is a option that they do quite a bit on large installations. As far as what to expect from them is every installer will have a Pedal Valves badge on that identifies who they are. The vehicles that they will be driving, they will have Pedal Valves logos on their vehicles at all times. They will knock on your door to identify themselves, and that way if the resident has any questions, they will answer a very short amount of questions and to be professional about it. And the reason we do that is they have a script that they work off of so that every installer has the same answer for every resident. We don't want different answers for different people. So we try to keep them to their script. It's a short thing. We have some FAQs that if a resident wants to, they can reach out as far as FAQs, but we also have a sheet that is going to be available. And the one thing that we will not be doing is we will not be entering homes. This is an outdoor meter set, so there's no reason for any installer to enter a home. Next slide, please. What if the issues or questions after my new meter has been installed? Pedal Valves has created a local phone number that will be included on the door hanger that they get. So if a resident does have questions regarding their meter install, they can call that local number and a representative of Pedal Valves will be on the other end to answer their questions. How will I know if you have my meter reading and not someone else's? This is a question that we get quite a bit, and there's a number of fail-safes and backups that we have in every install that we base it on the account number, we base it on the street address, we base it on the old meter serial number, and also the old read. So there's a number of checks that we go through before we can complete an install to make sure that we are installing the correct meter at the correct house. As far as is my account information secure, there really isn't any account information in the information that we are sending back from the meters. It's a premise ID number or a unique identifier that is unique to that property, and then their read or their consumption for that time period. So as far as security goes, there's really they're encrypted. All the transmitters are encrypted, so we have that security. but the information that we're sending, there's nothing in it that would tie a meter read to a specific person. What if I have questions about the last meter read before my upgrade? One of the processes that we have in place is when a installer arrives at the house, they go through their checks to ensure that they're at the right residence. And then what they'll do is they take a picture of the last read. So that way there we have that picture. We have a digital photograph that is reviewed once the install is done. It's reviewed on the back end of the process by Pedal Valve's auditing team to make sure that the picture is accurate, that it's easy to read. So once they get that, they also then in their handheld, when they're programming these meters, they will manually put in the read. And that way there we have both. But if in case there's a mistake with the manual entry, we can go back to the photograph that was taken, and that could be corrected on the back office right after the process is completed. Next question, or next slide, please. Yep.
And that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to entertain any questions, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that it took a lot of interdepartmental cooperation to get where we are at this point. We've had great help from Kate, of course, finance, the city manager's office, IT. So this has truly been a group effort to get where we're at, and we'll take any questions you may have.
Kim?
Thank you. I guess the fastest question I would have is what happens if a meter is being changed and something is noticed that there's an issue on either the customer side or our side, it takes longer, and or the installation of the new meter were to cause damage? Do we have a system set up in place to track those and anticipate issues?
Yes, we do. The contract states the responsibilities of Pedal Valve and then also the responsibilities of the city of Asheville. In the event that something were to happen during the installation, we have licensed plumbers on staff that if we need someone of that ability would be available to take care of that issue.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, that concludes our council agenda briefing.
Okay, thank you all, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.